criminals, conmen, and scalawags, ne'er-do-wells, thieves, cheats, rascals, bad boys, bad girls, swindlers, seducers, etc., etc. All the villains that we love to love are in the anthology Rogues, and this is the second of 4 episodes in which I am reviewing this summer 2014 anthology, edited by Gardner Dozois and George R.R. Martin. Hello everybody, and welcome back to SFF180. I have to admit, I am of course running a bit behind in getting the second of these Rogues reviews up, but of course if you've been following the channel for any period of time, you know there's been a lot going on in my life lately that has caused some delays, but anyway, happy to be back in the saddle, and here we go with the 6th through the 10th stories in this anthology. The 6th story in the book is called Provenance, and it is by David W. Ball, who is known for historical novels like Empires of Sand and Ironfire. The story focuses on a less than entirely scrupulous art dealer who, as the story opens, has acquired a long-lost Caravaggio for one of his many sleazy clients. The narrative traces the painting's long history, including one point passing through the hands of Nazi art thieves, and if you're a history buff like I am, you're going to find it completely absorbing. But the ending put a real smile on my face as we find out that we have all along been in the presence of a truly first-class rogue. This isn't one of the flashier stories in the anthology, but it is one of the more absorbing. The way the tale unfolds as layers and layers and layers of history are peeled back like onion skin is something that simply draws you into the tale and holds you fast. Carrie Vaughn, best known for her Kitty Norville urban fantasy series, is up next with a tale called Roaring Twenties. It depicts a fateful night in a speakeasy catering to those of a paranormal persuasion. And even though there isn't much in the way of a super tight story going on here, I mean, Carrie Vaughn's got enough red herrings going on that she could basically open a seafood restaurant. The atmosphere is just so thick and evocative that you simply find yourself drawn in to its world of smoky jazz, gangsters and gun malls, and dark magic. There's material here that Carrie Vaughn could do a whole lot more with, and it will be interesting to see if she revisits this setting, hopefully next time with a much more muscular story. Next, we move on to a novella by Scott Lynch, and it's pretty safe to say that Scott is one of the top names who's going to be drawing buyers to this anthology. Scott has, of course, spent his entire career up to his eyeballs in stories about rogues, and in A Year and a Day in Old Theridane, he introduces us to a unique and extremely likable gang of thieves led by one Amarel Parathis. I would love a novel about this woman and her cohorts as soon as Scott thinks he can squeeze one out. In the city of Theridane, career criminals can pay a tithe to the ruling wizard caste, the Parliament of Strife, and as long as they keep their noses clean, they can spend their entire lives enjoying sanctuary within the city, no matter how many other cities are out there in which they are wanted felons. But the wizards spend every waking hour warring amongst themselves, to the definite physical detriment of the city. And so one night, when Amarel has decided she's had enough, she rather foolishly and drunkenly decides to give one of the wizards, Evo Vandis, a piece of her mind. Now, seeing as how mouthing off to one of the wizards is sort of a violation of the terms of your sanctuary, Evo Vandis decides that, to be merciful to Amarel, so in order to avoid punishment, she gives Amarel the task of stealing something that cannot be stolen, so that Evo Vandis can gain an upper hand over her most important rival. Scott's trademark humor and inventiveness simply flow across the pages as Amarel and her gang decide to rise to the occasion and set to work pulling off the ultimate heist. One of the best and most purely fun stories in the entire anthology, A Year and a Day in Old Theridane, only suffers from occasional moments of lag, and again, the characters and the location are prime fodder for a book all their own. This one is worth checking out the anthology for all on its own. Bradley Denton offers the 9th story in the anthology with the novella Bad Brass, which is about, of all things, the theft of instruments from a high school band. Now, Brad is a personal acquaintance of mine, and he is a writer who has a great deal of skill when it comes to evoking the local color every time he sets his stories against the backdrop of small-town Americana. But he isn't a very prolific novelist, and he hasn't really done SF in more than 20 years, which is why a lot of you watching this video probably have never heard of him. In fact, he is best known for his 1993 novel Blackburn, which is not SF at all. It's a novel about a serial killer on a moral mission. It's a very, very, very black comedy. Now, Bad Brass has charm to spare as it unfolds the tale of an amateur conspiracy, shall we say, by a bunch of high school students in a small Texas town to sell sousaphones to, of all things, they're kind of like tubas, to a private buyer that have been stolen from their high school band. Now, Denton's plot is just chock full of characters who lead these really kind of interesting double lives, and most of whom would probably really like to have lives that are a little bit cooler and more romantic and exciting than they actually are. Not just these, presumably respectable high school students, but the viewpoint character, the narrator of the story, who is a substitute teacher who has a bit of a sideline in stealing from other thieves. Now, Bad Brass drew me in effortlessly, if only for the way in which the depiction of small-town Texas is handled with such great loving care, where even among thieves, everybody in town knows everyone else, and nobody's secrets stay secret for very long. And while I did think that the story was quite overlong for its basic premise, and quite often the dialogue was a bit too self-consciously bantery, still, it's told with a whole lot of craft and a whole lot of heart. Bradley Denton is a writer, I think, who deserves a whole lot more recognition than he has. Finally, the 10th story is Heavy Metal by fan-favorite writer Cherie Priest, and it's a nifty little kind of modern-day western in which, you have the hero riding into the one-horse or no-horse town and driving out the bad guys or the forces of evil. In this case, it is a rundown mining town where mountaintop removal has thoroughly devastated the local environment, which is only just now beginning to come back. Now, Kilgore Jones is a guy who's kind of like an exorcist who comes into town one day. He's like an exorcist by way of old Western gunslinger, and he comes into town because he has been summoned, because a team of researchers from a university, a couple of their members, have been set upon by some sort of being, some kind of beast that has risen from the ruined landscape, this pool of water in the ruined landscape, and has taken, in fact, the physical form of one of the many dead miners. Now, as cool as that premise is, I gotta be honest with you, and the story itself is really rather diffident, and to be fair, I'm really not someone who fawns over the work of Cherie Priest, the way so many of my other friends in SFF fandom do. Now, really all that happens is that Kilgore comes to town, and there's some scenes with dialogue in which he finds out what's what, and then he goes and he confronts the beastie, and he does what he is there to do, and it all just kind of ends, and alright, well, that's nice. Next. There was so much more room to create atmosphere. There was so much more room to create tension, even this feeling of kind of palpable eeriness. I mean, imagine this concept of a strange creature, a demon of the earth that takes the form of a dead man and is rising up, to snare victims. I mean, there's some real room for, some scares and some creep-outs there, but Cherie doesn't really do a whole lot with that, so that was really kind of disappointing for me. So I gotta say, this is one of the book's more mediocre offerings. But overall, I gotta say, Rogues is shaping up to be a really strong anthology. It's a perfect example of what an anthology ought to be. Strong tales by fan-favorite writers, people that you already know and love, so that you can look forward to their work, but it also presents itself as a vehicle by which you can discover new writers, or at least writers who are new to you. And that is all I have time for on this episode of SFF180. As always, thank you so much for joining me. Remember, the most important thing of all, these are reviews. You will not always agree with me, but if you enjoyed watching, as always, please leave a like, share this video far and wide with your SFF reading friends on social media, and above all, subscribe, and encourage all of your SFF reading friends to subscribe as well. It's what helps the channel to grow. So thank you very much for all the ongoing support. I will see you on Mailbag Monday, on the next episode of my Rogues review, and on all my other video reviews. And until I see you then, happy reading.